smart women want to learn how to transform their intimate relationships. We feel frustrated, disconnected, and lackluster in our relationships, but we are done with blaming our partners. We are done with doing nothing about it. We are ready to do our bit to make things better so that we feel more connected, more alive, more truly ourselves in our intimate relationships. Hi, I'm Nicole Matheson, and on Relationship Smart Women's podcast episode today, I'm interviewing Sandi Phillips-Melyer. I don't know about you, but whenever I am feeling stuck or like I am neck deep in the struggle, there is one thing that always helps, and that is listening to some Abraham Hicks. I am a huge fan. There's just something about the way they continually bring the message back to the simple laws of what you focus on, you attract. That reminds me of my power and makes everything feel that little bit better. And that's why I jumped at the chance of interviewing today's guest, because Sandi spent nearly a decade traveling with Abraham Hicks on Esther and Jerry's roadshow and absorbed their wisdom and their high vibrations. I really hope you enjoy this chat as much as I did. Just a heads up, this interview was made nearly 2 years ago, which is why halfway through when you hear me talk about the name of the podcast, I'm talking about it as Unbreakable Love. It's still relevant, everything we talk about and that conversation in particular. So I wanted to keep it in and just give you this little heads up so that you're not totally baffled and confused. Sandi has spent some time traveling with Abraham Hicks and has now written a book about it called On the Road with Abraham, and has lots of amazing offerings as well. But Sandi, I just wanted to start with you telling us a little bit about that experience, how it came about, and how you feel at the other end of it.
Well, the synchronicities that led up to it are really fun. In my early 20s, quite a long time ago, I got exposed to Shakti Gawain, creative visualization, which is something that people may or may not be familiar with. And she suggested that you write out your ideal day, your ideal job, your ideal life, your ideal relationship. And I just did all that, and she suggested that you put it in a notebook and stick it away. And it was pretty much fit every piece of the bill. You know, I wanted to be at some lovely place, not too far away, most weekends, and then several times a year I wanted to do exotic, longer trips. And of course I was a single mom and was looking for the perfect partner, and had spent many, many years listening to the Abraham material. And it was just fabulous that the universe was able to roll it all up into one. I met Scotty the weekend that he got hired out of the hot seat. Not everybody may know the story, but he got hired by Abraham. And I was at that same seminar that weekend, and we had met before that happened. And then, quite contrary to what I normally do, I decided that I was going to see him again at the Boston seminar about a month later, and that I was going to give him my card. I've never really been the person who makes the overture in any relationship, so it was a big thing for me to do that. My personal policy is that if the pursuit is on the woman's end, then there usually isn't enough momentum to hang into the relationship when things get tough. So I had never really been able to put myself out there like that. But for some reason, this just all felt so much bigger than me. It was like somebody else had made the decision, and somebody else, I said, I'm going to give him my card, and I'm going to say, if you're ever inspired to get in touch with me, give me a call.
So Scotty is now your husband, is that right?
Yes.
Yes. Right. Just wanted to clarify that.
Yes. We met that weekend, which was actually 5/6/7 was the date, May 6th of 2007.
Wow.
So the numbers are really fun. I mean, there's just so many levels of synchronicity to it that we could spend the whole hour just talking about those synchronicities.
I think that's a really fun conversation too, because I could do the same with the way I met my husband, but...
Nice. Yes, it's very fun. So he did call me, and we got together. We could spend lots of time on those details as well. I was very well received by the other people that were on the crew, and the decision that we made was that we were just going to travel together for a little while. And then Esther decided that I should work for her. So I had been going to the seminars every weekend and helping, but going into seminar. And so when she decided that that was the thing to do, she paid me retroactively for all the time that I had been there, which was just a fabulous. Yeah, I know. It was so fun.
We love Esther.
I mean, there's just so many cool things about all of it.
Yeah.
So then there I was. We were both working and traveling. We actually worked and traveled for 7 years in RV. And we went everywhere. That was on my list of places that I wanted to go. Wow. And I made a new list, and we went everywhere on that list. And then I made a new list, and most of those places have gotten visits from us. There's still a new list, of course, but it was really fun. I got to go to all of the national parks, Yosemite and Yellowstone and all of those places, Glacier Mountain Park. So we went around the United States generally 2 to 3 times a year, depending upon the schedule. And then I've been on 22 of the cruises. Wow. So Hawaii, Tahiti, Canary Islands. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. Australia, New Zealand. So can I ask, what happens to you when you're exposed to that consciousness a lot? It becomes your set point, I think.
Yeah.
It becomes your norm. In some ways, it's a little unreal. Like Abraham will say to you, we don't want you to only feel good when you're on cruises. We want you to take how good you feel on cruises and go out into your day-to-day life and be able to maintain the stability of your alignment when you're not around everybody who thinks this way, So it's kind of an incubator space. Yeah. So to be in it for 8 years was, exhilarating to say the least. Yeah. To always be on the leading edge of thought when new things were coming out of Abraham, and personally, some of my favorite experiences in my whole life were sitting around with Jerry and Esther after seminar and listening to what their experience of seminar was. Oh, God. Like Esther will say, oh, I remembered this. And Jerry will go, oh, yeah. And what about this? And it was just such a animated place to be, that there is really nothing that has that same kind of satisfaction for me.
Can I just pause you? I want to come back to the difference between Abraham and Esther and Jerry in a second.
Sure.
But before that, I'm just wondering if there may be some listeners out there who aren't familiar with Abraham and Esther and Jerry Hicks.
Sure.
If you have a kind of summary that you could spiel out for that.
Sure. Well, they were business people, and they actually had a meeting with another channel, and that channel suggested that they start to meditate. And at that point, Esther said it felt like somebody was telling her to sit on a bed of nails, you know what I mean? Because that's kind of what they thought about all that woo-woo stuff, you know, and they put meditation in with that woo-woo stuff. But she rendezvoused with the energy that is Abraham. They described them, it's a channeling situation. They described themselves as the heart of all religions, the truth that is at the heart of all religions.
So Abraham is a cluster of spirit, of soul intelligence, soul consciousness. That is channeling. How do you describe Abraham exactly?
Yes, they describe themselves, and Esther describes them as non-physical entities, non-physical beings. There is, people have asked before about, you know, what is the makeup of Abraham? And there is, you know, some basic, I guess, beings that you would call them, that they're there all the time. But then depending upon the depth and the breadth of the question, for instance, my dad's love was alternative education. And when somebody asked a question about alternative education, I could feel my dad, you know, because he's still involved in all, I mean, and that's one of the things they talk about is all the things that are important to us while we're in a physical body are all things that still have meaning and importance to us when we no longer have this physical body. And so, you know, that's how come they talk about there is no veil.
Okay, so you're just to clarify, your dad is no longer on the earthly plane, is that correct?
Yes.
So when there was a question about that, you could actually feel his presence through Abraham, through
absolutely.
Esther being channeled.
Absolutely.
Wow. Okay.
And I'm not really that sensitive to energy. You know, a lot of people say that they can see auras and those kind of things. And that isn't a common part of my experience. So to be able to have those unmistakable experiences is very powerful. Yes. Jerry, so Esther is the channel.
Yes.
Abraham is the being that she channels, yes. And Jerry is her husband, who is also no longer physical. Oh, right. Yes, and yes, the one of the things I wrote about in the book was some of the experiences on the Canary Island cruise, and somebody said that they wanted to ask Jerry a question. And I had been around the Abraham and Esther experience long enough so that I could tell that everything changed. Everything changed. Like the way Abraham held her body was entirely different. They started tapping their foot in the same way that Jerry always tapped his foot. And I've never seen Abraham do that with Esther any other time. There was like just these mannerisms that it was unmistakably Jerry. It was unmistakably Jerry. In the same way that in that question, it was unmistakably my dad. Yes. But, you know, there isn't proof for any of these things. No. So my knowing is enough for me. Yes. So a very long answer to a short question. So the beings that make up Abraham respond to the question and expand their access to infinite wisdom to bring whatever is appropriate to the questioner.
Yes, and I just love exposing myself to the question answer, and just especially the answer. Like, it just always feels so right in my being.
Well, you recognize truth.
Yes, it feels like
yes.
That. Yes. But I want to come back to that just briefly, that difference between Esther and Jerry as people and Esther in particular as Abraham.
Yes.
What do you notice when she's not channeling?
Well, Jerry used to make a joke that he was going to get a sign and hang it around Esther's neck so that he could have Esther or turn it over for Abraham. I mean, Esther and Abraham are I want to say noticeably different. So are you familiar with the term muggle?
Muggle from Harry Potter.
Muggle. Are you familiar with the term muggle?
I don't think so.
So It comes from the Harry Potter series.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I am. Yep.
And so what they're referring to is non-magical people. And so I just use that as a term shorthand for people that don't understand that you create your own reality.
Okay.
So,
Yes.
right. And that's what I was referring to earlier. They want you to be able to go out in the world of muggles and maintain your alignment. They don't want you to just be with other people who understand that you create your own reality, because that's easy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The part that's the challenge for us is being in the world, and maintaining our alignment. But anyway, so Esther is she's evolved, and she does her work, and she's been, deeply submersed in this stuff for 30 something years. But all of us, no matter how evolved you get, we all have, like on the computer, when you push the little line and the program, the on the screen shrinks down to the left-hand side. And so the program is still running. It's just in the background, right? And so we're all muggles because we're trained as muggles. And so Esther has muggle stuff going on, and Abraham never does. Abraham is consistently wise and unconditionally loving. And I know that Esther shoots for that, just like we all do. Yes. But she has resistance and reactivity just like we all do. Yes. And Abraham never does.
Yeah,
Abraham never.
Thank you. So interesting. Yes. I just find this so fascinating. Now,
yes, it is.
I suppose I'm really fascinated in love, and I've heard Abraham say that love is an indicator of alignment.
Yes.
And how you perceive yourself to be ties into how you feel in relationship.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
So, and I feel that how much love I'm allowing myself, how much self-love, how much kindness, how much nurturing and tending to my anxiety or my fear rather than, shaming it, kind of is reflected in my world. But I suppose I'm wondering about your experience with this, with the allowing of love. And love can be quite uncomfortable. We can resist it. We can turn away from it at times.
It's not the love that's uncomfortable, it's the resistance.
Okay, yeah.
Love is always easy.
Yeah.
Abraham always used to say, it's easier to be rich than poor. It's easier to be healthy than ill. It's easier to feel good than feel bad. And I used to go, well, of course it would be easier if I had more money. And of course it would be easier if my feet didn't hurt. And, blah, 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 on and on and on, But I think when you talk about love being equated with alignment, I think that's what we are. Yeah. We're light and love. And that is our natural state, is one of alignment. And we are born in that state, and then we're trained out of it mostly by well-meaning parents, well-meaning teachers, well-meaning authorities of all types. They want to keep us safe. They want to help us learn, all that kind of stuff. And in that process, we, especially 0 to 6, I don't know if you've explored any of the neurological basis of any of this, but the theory at this point is that 0 to 6, we're running in theta mode, which means we're like an open container and we take everything in without a filter. And so, for instance, if when you're little you see your parents fighting, you associate that with love. And so then later on, when you're 30 and you're with your husband or whatever, fighting may feel bad, but it's normal, because that's what it is that you're used to, or that's what it is that you've been programmed to, but without filters. Because if we were if we were able to separate what's happening from who we are, then we would understand that that light and that love is always there. It's just the fear response that covers it up.
Yes. So it's the fear that is uncomfortable.
Yes.
It's the fear. So can we unpack that just a little? What is the fear?
Sure.
I mean, because it doesn't really make sense when you see it from the perspective of love is easy, you know, wealth is easy, all of that.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Why would we fear it, you know? So the fear is really just a response to our conditioning. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, absolutely. And only that. You know, I don't know if you've heard some people say fear, false evidence appearing real.
False evidence appearing real. Yes, I've heard that.
That's what fear is. And so it all comes down to, and mostly the work that I do with people is around definitions. So we pick up definitions somewhere along the way. And if they're heavy and they feel bad, that's an indicator that they come from somebody else. And it's not really who we are. It's not the love. It's not the light that we came to be. And the parts of us that never change are the love and the light.
I love that. Okay, so just wanting to clarify that again. We are love and light. And so who we are and who we're meant to be feels like love and light. So anything that feels heavy is conditioning, training, someone else's ideas. Probably not their truth either, but their ideas, their beliefs.
Not their truth, but they're also picked up along the road definitions.
Yes, definitions. Yeah. Okay. So, and just to wrap that up to the question that I asked you, I think is that our definition of love can get tangled in, like you're saying, arguing, control. You know, if someone else making me happy, that kind of thing.
Yes. The world is full of these streams of energy that say you need to be different so I can feel better.
Yes.
Or you need to be different so I can love you.
Yes.
And that is, or I need to be different so you can love me.
Yes. And they kind of go hand in hand, wouldn't you say?
Yes, very much so.
Yeah.
Yes, very much so. But you know, I mean, if you loved me, you would do this, right? I mean, how many, like if you just go into the grocery store and listen to the music that's playing in the background, oh, if you love me, you know what I mean? And so we get this program
message all the time, don't we?
All the time. I mean, I grew up listening to the radio, but I didn't realize what those songs were telling me, you know? And so I think a lot of our process, there's another teacher, and he says that the purpose of our life experience is to trade the beliefs that we were given for the beliefs that we prefer. And so a big percentage of our adulthood, for those of us that want to do this work, and we don't all come wanting to do this work, and that's fine. Yeah. But for those of us that want to do this work, my experience is that the actual work of adulthood is just figuring out what definitions don't serve us well anymore, holding them to the light of truth. You know, for instance, if Scotty's upset about something and he looks at me a certain way, I can feel my old reactivity coming up saying, oh, he's angry. I should do something different. When 99 times out of 100, whatever it is that he's upset about doesn't even have anything to do with me. And most likely it has something to do with something that happened to him when he was 0 to 6, you know? So there's this layer upon layer upon layer. And quite frankly, I'm not sure that you can really get to the bottom of it.
Oh, you know, I totally agree. I am constantly flabbergasted by how much healing I can do and still and still find more.
Yeah.
It is, it's beautiful. Not complaining here, but it is flabbergasting.
It is.
I agree. I don't think you'd ever get to the bottom of it. I don't think we need to.
Right.
No.
And that, I think, is a misunderstanding.
Yes.
That we think that we're going to get to the bottom of it.
Well, it's kind of that whole destination thinking rather than journey thinking, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
One day I will be perfectly healed. No. The journey is facing it, loving it.
Yeah.
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 Growing from.
Yes. Always going back to the love of self. I mean, that's really the root of everything. And it often takes a very long time. I'm 50 something, and I'm only just starting to understand that that's what it's all about.
Yes, and I want to talk to you about this.
Go ahead.
Yeah, because, and I just want to kind of draw in the title of this podcast, which is Unbreakable Love.
Yeah.
And I was kind of explaining to you before that I don't mean for that to be about this relationship I need to hold on for hell or high water and make sure it doesn't break. This is actually about the unbreakable love as source, as within us. And when we can get really centered and stable in that, then, we can go out into the world and have intimate relationships that thrive. And we were kind of talking about this just before we went live, and you were saying something about how you just continually come back to that. And I want to talk about that because I think it's important to point out that we don't stay in unconditional love.
Yes.
As mothers. As Abraham, yes.
Yes. Yes. And Abraham's really precise in helping us to understand that it's not about never being out of alignment. No. It's about what way are you focused and how quickly you recover. And I think that's kind of the leading edge for a lot of us who have been doing this stuff for a long time is being okay when we're in it. In the definition that doesn't feel good, in the feeling that doesn't feel good, in the circumstances that don't feel good. But I think that's really what you're talking about when you're saying unbreakable. Abraham uses the words, we want your feelings to be unhurtable. If you're so knowing that all is well, that we are all source, that everything is unfolding perfectly, then there really isn't any reason to feel slighted or offended really, there's no reason to be in fear. The reasons that we're in fear are all from conditioning. Unless, the bus is coming down the road at you. That makes sense. Then your fear is of use, to get out of the road. But mostly fear is about reactivity, and it's also giving us information. Anytime you don't feel good about the way that you're feeling, it's a definition that's no longer serving you well, that's asking for you to look at it and choose something different. Like my example earlier. If Scotty comes in and I see that he's upset, my inner being, source, knows that all is well, that nothing's gone wrong, that nothing's going wrong, that nothing's going to go wrong. And that's usually where we get off track. It's not really off track, but it's where we usually get out of alignment. I look at him and can tell that he's upset about something, and then because I'm not stable or confident in my knowing that all is well, I start to wonder, did I do something wrong? What happened? You know what I mean? And so that's, there's a saying, we're all just walking each other home, and that's really what it is. We're all just on this journey to figure out how to love ourselves unconditionally. And it's like you said, it's a process.
I can imagine it's very interesting having two of you in relationship who are very involved in this work, in deliberate creation.
Yes.
And, I imagine there are times when you hold each other accountable and remind each other.
Yes, absolutely. And, I'm not going to pretend that we don't have our contrast within the relationship, but because we both understand how things work, and it doesn't happen all the time, but, sometimes I can look at him and I can go, "Ah, I know, you just need me to be different so you can feel better." Or I can look at him and say, "Oh, I just need you to be different so I can feel better." And then we both laugh and it kind of dissipates it. You know what I mean? Sometimes, not all the time.
And so
Um,
what is the thought process that is the next step after that? So you're catching yourself in your old thinking, which is I need
yes,
you to be different so that I can feel better. What's
yes.
the better feeling thought?
I don't need anything to be different so I can feel better. My source feels good no matter what. My source is not involved in whatever my small self is thinking about whatever's happening between me and whoever I'm interacting with. Um, but the definition, it goes back to that same thing. So what that does is it gives me an opportunity to say, oh, I have some reactivity here that's coming up, and I can think it's about him, or I can understand that everything is only a mirror. And so however it leaves me feeling is my work. It's I don't know. My dad used to look at me that way, and then I know there'd always be trouble after or whatever. You know what I mean? There's something that's triggering whatever it is that my reaction is based on, and it doesn't have anything to do with Scotty or whoever it is that I'm interacting with. It has only to do with the mirror. So if it leaves me feeling like he doesn't love me right. Such a funny word. So what that makes me know is there's something about me that I'm not loving right. You know what I mean? So if it leaves me feeling criticized because he is angry, then how do I criticize myself? What is the information that it's giving me? Because that's really all it is. It's only data.
Love it. Okay. Now I've got a question from the women who I serve. So the women who I serve, there's a few different parts to the women who I serve, but the majority are women in relationship, in long-term relationship, have been for a very long time, and are perhaps feeling a little bit resentful, a little bit numb, a little bit disconnected. So they still want to be in a relationship, but they don't want it to feel like this.
Yes. Yes.
So I'm wondering what your what you would say to these women.
Well, if you're feeling disconnected, it's because you are disconnecting from your own resources. That's an interesting word, resource.
It is.
Right? So if you think about what, the language doesn't have any coincidences in it. You know what I mean? So your resource is always you, and your resource is always love, and your resource is always source. And so if something's happening outside of you that's leaving you feeling disconnected from that, then the real answer is to look within and say, why am I, like if I'm feeling neglected in my relationship, how am I neglecting myself? If I'm feeling abused in my relationship, how am I abusing myself? If I'm not feeling loved in my relationship, how am I not loving myself? If I'm not feeling respected, and on and on and on. I mean, it's as reliable and consistent as gravity. And we're not trained to think about it that way. We're trained to say, all that one finger out has three fingers pointing back, and we don't realize that. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I feel like out there'll be women who are very resistant to bringing the three fingers back in.
It's such a long journey.
Oh yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, I agree. It's such a long journey.
Yes. And so, what do you do between here and there? What would I say to those women? Well, the specifics vary, but the long and the short of it is that all relationships are designed for us to know more of who we are.
Yes.
So any relationship is a success. So,
I love that. And that comes back to what Abraham always says, that there is no failure. There's contrast.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
To make you know what you want.
Yes. So, I've worked with people who are divorcing, and the most important thing is to understand that nothing's gone wrong. All relationships aren't made to last forever, and sometimes we explore them longer than is good for us, according to the people around us. But if you're not done exploring something yet, then you're not done exploring something yet, and there's still gifts in there for you.
Yeah, I agree. And a lot of the time we need a certain level of frustration before we can get the learning and the alignment and the motivation to get into alignment. Yeah.
So that's always the answer. The answer always is to ask yourself the question, how does this help me? How is this helping me? Because if your husband or anybody, kids, parents, coworkers, if anybody's making you crazy, the only place that there is room for change is within.
And power as well. That's your only power, really.
Yes. Yes. And really your power comes from the freedom to apply whatever definition you want. So for instance, somebody loses their job and they go, my life is over. Another person loses their job and they say, all right, I can start my own business that I've always wanted to start. Same set of circumstances, different definition, entirely different life trajectory.
Yeah.
So it's always about the definition that so if you feel like your relationship or your marriage is stale, it's going to be.
Yeah.
Because that's how powerful you are. You're choosing the definition and you're applying that to the circumstances, and the circumstances reflect back to you perfectly what your definitions are.
Yes.
So really, it just all comes down to the freedom to apply the definitions and the ability to maneuver into a new definition that you choose and that you prefer and that has a higher place of power. Yes. And it's not about power over somebody else. It's about your own feelings becoming unhurtable, right? Because as you keep releasing those layers of fear, I mean, I don't know if you ever get to the place where you don't have any buttons, but you do get to the place where you're not blown about by every wind, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel personally for me, and I think you kind of touched on this before, I get triggered, my buttons get touched, but I see it from a better perspective much sooner. And
yes.
I'm able to do something to feel better much quicker. So,
yes.
So I don't think it necessarily stops happening. And there are certain things that can keep me down much longer than others, but it just, it feels like it becomes a less drawn out, less toxic, less traumatic experience every time.
Yes. Yes. Hence what Abraham says, it's not about never being out of alignment. It's about how, what way you're focused and how quickly you recover.
Yeah. And get back in.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Now, I've just got a couple more questions for you, Sandi. The first one is, I love the way you keep bringing this back to definitions. I'm wondering what definition you're working on at the moment in your life.
Unconditional love.
Yes.
It's kind of, and actually more specifically, unconditional self-love. We have lots of reasons that we're not good enough, all of us. And it doesn't need to be something as exaggerated as fear, self-criticism. you know, never getting enough done, never, you know, whatever. Never in itself is a word I'm trying not to use. So the leading edge is definitely about, you know, that journey back to self-love and the journey back to self-love. And you know, like you said, I think, so I went to Unity Church when my daughter was 3, and she's like 30 something now. Wow. And at that point, you know, 25 plus years ago, just kind of eking into the edge of my consciousness was this idea that we are God. And that felt blasphemy to me. You know, I'm not even raised with a real religious background, but just being in our society was enough to go, me, God? Oh, that's blasphemy, you know? And so, you know, is that the first step? No. I mean, that's still a pretty advanced step. But I mean, I had that on the periphery of my vision 25 years ago. You know what I mean? And I'm only just really beginning to go, okay, I'm source. I'm, you know, I can hear myself wanting to use the word, I'm perfect just the way I am. But the word perfect has a whole bunch of connotations to it. Right. You know what I mean? So a big piece of it is coming to understand that everything is neutral. So it goes back to that same idea of definitions. So I can look in the mirror and go, oh my God, you're still beating yourself up for that crap? You know what I mean? And so then what's happening is I'm out of alignment, and then I'm beating myself up for being out of alignment. So you can't even get to that place of what the first issue was while you're out of alignment, because you're too busy beating yourself up for being out of alignment. Yeah. Which is why Abraham material now, you know, talks about they've added a whole nother step, which is being in that place of not alignment and having it be not only okay, but really our inner being knows that if you're having contrast, you got good stuff coming. Yeah. You know what I mean? So our inner beings go, contrast, yay! You know? And I don't even pretend to be there. I can be there in hindsight, you know what I mean? Like I can look at contrast from 2 years ago and go, oh, well, you know, it was big at the time, but it was really the best thing that ever happened, or it was the best thing that could have happened. Yeah. But ideally, I don't want to take 2 years to get there all the time, you know? So that's the leading edge I think we all have.
Oh yeah, I'm totally there too.
Yeah.
Love. Mm-hmm. Oh, I've really enjoyed this chat. People will probably want to look you up and see how they can join in on some of the wonderful things you're creating. Where can they go to find you, and what are you up to?
Well, the best way, if you want to get in touch with me personally, right now, if any of your listeners would like a free PDF of my book, I'd be happy to share that with them. Mm-hmm. In order to do that, the best way to get in touch with me is Sandi, Sandi, at ontheroadwithabraham.com.
And that'll be in the show notes. Yep.
Yes. Okay, good. I am just in the process of getting ready to launch a membership site, because what I found is that those of us who aren't muggles want community with like-minded others. And often once you understand this work, you know, sometimes just a little bit of tweaking, like you don't need a whole year of coaching. Sometimes you just need 15 minutes. You know what I mean? And so that will allow this to happen really easily. And that will be deliberateCreatorsClub.com.
Beautiful. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for talking to us and sharing your wisdom with us. It's been an absolute pleasure.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me, and I appreciate your loving energy. You're a beautiful soul.
Likewise. Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you.